The Quiet Ones. Chapter 3. The Elevator to Level 8. Daniel Mercer learned something important about secrets. They did not disappear. They waited. For 2 days he did nothing. That was the hardest part. Not investigating. Not searching. Not asking questions. Doing nothing. The human mind hated empty spaces. It filled them. Daniel's mind filled every quiet moment with possibilities. Maybe he was sick. Maybe Collins had never existed. Maybe the tape was fake. Maybe someone was manipulating him. Maybe everyone else was right. That last possibility bothered him most. Because if everyone else was right, then Daniel had no enemy. He had no conspiracy. He simply had a broken mind. And broken minds were much easier to silence. He returned to work on Monday. The Federal Continuity Analysis Center looked exactly the same. That was what frightened him. The building had always been intimidating. Gray stone, narrow windows, security checkpoints, cameras hidden behind dark glass. But now every hallway felt staged, like a movie set built to resemble a workplace. People smiled. People talked. People drank coffee. People existed. Daniel found himself studying every face, looking for something. A mistake. A crack. A sign. Nobody noticed. Except Harper. She looked up from her desk as he walked past. Daniel. He stopped. His pulse jumped. She rarely used his first name. Yes. You've been staring at me for 3 days. Daniel forced a smile. Have I? Yes. She closed the file in front of her. Why? There was no accusation in her voice. Only curiosity. I've had a stressful week. Harper watched him carefully. Then she said something that made his blood run cold. You miss him. Daniel didn't move. What? She looked around the office, at the empty space beside her desk. Collins. The word felt like a door opening. You remember him? Her expression changed instantly. Not fear. Regret. I shouldn't have said that. Daniel leaned closer. You remember him. Keep your voice down. Who was he? Harper looked toward the security cameras, then toward the hallway. Only after checking both did she whisper, someone who found something he wasn't supposed to find. An hour later, Daniel received an encrypted message. No sender. No subject. Only coordinates. And one sentence. If you want Collins, come alone. Daniel stared at the message for 5 minutes, then deleted it. 30 seconds later it returned. Same message. Same timestamp. Same encryption key. Impossible. He forwarded it to himself from another device. The copy arrived before he sent it. That was when he stopped pretending this was normal. The coordinates led him beneath the oldest section of the building, a place Daniel had never visited. The basement levels. Everyone knew the building had 3. Public records showed 4. Employees joked there was probably a secret 5th level where executives hid from meetings. Nobody joked about anything below that. The security checkpoint at the bottom of the stairs was unmanned. That alone was unusual. Nothing inside this facility was ever unmanned. Daniel scanned his badge. Red light. Access denied. He tried again. Red light. Then the speaker above the door clicked. Daniel Mercer. The voice was unfamiliar. Yes. Your presence has been anticipated. Daniel stepped backward. Who is this? No answer. The lock released. The elevator behind the door looked ancient. Not old. Ancient. The walls were brushed steel, scratched and worn. There were no buttons. Only one key slot. Daniel examined it. A small label was attached beneath the slot. Level 8. He stared. The building only had 4 floors underground. Everyone knew that. He inserted his badge. Nothing happened. Then the elevator spoke. Verification required. Daniel looked around. Verification of what? A pause. Then, memory. The doors closed. A small scanner descended from the ceiling. Daniel froze. A thin blue light passed over his eyes, his ears, his face. A soft mechanical voice spoke. Identity confirmed. The elevator remained still. Then, continuity confirmed. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? No answer. The elevator began moving. Down. Not up. Not sideways. Down. The numbers on the display changed. 1. Then they continued. 5. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. Daniel expected a hidden government facility. Computers. Scientists. Armed guards. Something familiar. Instead, he saw a hallway. And that was worse. Because it looked normal. Fluorescent lights. Gray walls. Office doors. Water fountains. A normal government corridor. Except everything was slightly wrong. The carpet pattern repeated too often. The lights hummed at different pitches. The air smelled faintly like rain. Not fresh rain. Rain trapped indoors. At the far end of the hallway stood a sign. Continuity Assessment Division. Daniel stared. He worked for the Continuity Analysis Center. But this was different. The words were almost identical. Almost. A man stepped from a doorway. Late 40s. Dark suit. No expression. Daniel Mercer. Daniel recognized him immediately. Not because they had met. Because Daniel had seen his photograph in classified reports. Special Agent Marcus Hale. Counterintelligence. Missing person investigations. Internal threats. The man responsible for finding people who disappeared. Hale looked at Daniel. You've caused a great deal of concern. Daniel laughed softly. Who are you? You know who I am. I know your file. Then you know I'm here because of you. Daniel's jaw tightened. Am I being arrested? Hale looked almost offended. No. Then why am I here? The agent glanced down the hallway. Because someone wants to know what you remember. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Who? Hale didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward a reinforced door. A small window was set into the metal. Inside was an empty room, except for one thing. A chair. And on the chair, coffee mug. White ceramic. Chipped handle. Black lettering. World's okayest dad. Daniel stopped breathing. Hale watched him. You see it. Daniel stared through the glass. Where did you get that? Hale's expression remained unreadable. We found it 3 days ago. Where? In a room that didn't exist. Silence. Daniel looked at the mug, then at Hale. What is this place? The agent looked down the hallway, at the doors, at the endless hidden offices beneath the government building. Then he said, This is where we study things that shouldn't exist. Daniel swallowed. And Collins? Hale hesitated. For the first time, the agent looked afraid. Collins wasn't erased. Daniel waited. He was replaced. The hallway lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then every light on level 8 turned off. For several seconds, there was only darkness. Then the emergency lights activated. Red. Low. Warning. Hale looked toward the far end of the corridor. Daniel followed his gaze. A door that had been closed was now open. Neither man had seen it happen. Inside the doorway was darkness. And from somewhere deep inside the room, a voice whispered, Daniel. His blood turned cold, because he recognized the voice. It was Nathan Collins. Hale reached for his weapon. Don't answer. Daniel stared into the darkness. The voice came again. Daniel. A pause. Then, why did you leave me here? The door slowly began closing. Hale grabbed Daniel's arm. We need to go. Daniel didn't move. Because beneath Colin's voice, beneath the words, he heard something else. A second voice. Then a third. Then dozens. All speaking through the same mouth. All saying his name. The elevator doors opened behind them. Hale pulled him backward. Whatever you do. The agent stared into the darkness. Do not let it know you heard it. The doors closed. And as the elevator began rising toward the world above, Daniel looked at the security camera in the corner. The small red light was blinking, recording, watching. And for one brief second, Daniel saw something standing beside the camera. Something that looked almost human. Almost. Then the elevator doors shut. The quiet ones. Chapter 4, Record 42. The elevator ride back to the surface lasted 11 minutes. Daniel knew because he counted every second. 11 minutes. That was how long he stood beside Agent Marcus Hale in complete silence while the elevator climbed from level 8 to the ordinary world above. Neither man spoke. Neither man looked at the other. Daniel kept staring at the numbers. The normal floors. The floors where people drank coffee. Where meetings happened. Where employees complained about deadlines. Where nobody knew something impossible existed beneath their feet. When the doors opened, the noise of the building rushed in. Phones ringing. Footsteps. Printers. Human voices. Felt wrong. After seeing level 8, the surface world felt like a performance. A carefully maintained illusion. Hale escorted Daniel to an empty conference room. No cameras. No windows. No coffee machine. Just a table and 2 chairs. Daniel sat. Hale remained standing. You have questions. Daniel almost laughed. That's an understatement. Hale nodded. Good. Good. Questions keep people alive. Daniel studied him. How long have you known? Known what? That something is happening. Hale looked toward the closed door. Then back at Daniel. Longer than you. How long? The agent hesitated. 26 years. Daniel felt a chill. 26. Project Orchid began before either of us knew what it was. Daniel leaned forward. What is Orchid? Hale ignored the question. Do you know why governments classify information? National security. That's the answer people are given. And the real answer? Hale looked tired. Because sometimes knowledge changes the person who learns it. Hale opened a folder. Not a digital file. Paper. Daniel noticed that immediately. The government trusted computers with almost everything. Except secrets that needed to survive. Inside were photographs. Old photographs. The first showed a research team standing in a frozen landscape. Antarctica. The second showed a hole carved into the ice. The third showed something beneath it. Daniel stared. What am I looking at? Hale didn't answer immediately. That was taken in 1963. That doesn't make sense. Why? Because that isn't a facility. No. It looks like. Daniel stopped. He didn't want to say it. Hale said it for him. A city. The photograph showed impossible structures beneath the ice. Not buildings. Not machines. Something between architecture and biology. Curved surfaces. Smooth walls. Shapes that seemed grown rather than constructed. Daniel felt uncomfortable looking at it. Not because it was alien. Because some part of him recognized it. Where are the original explorers? Daniel asked. Hale turned the page. Personnel list. 32 names. 23 died. How? Officially. Hale gave a humorless smile. Exposure. And unofficially? Hale placed another photograph on the table. A medical scan. Daniel frowned. What am I looking at? One of the survivors. The scan showed a human body. Mostly. The skeleton appeared normal, except for strange patterns inside the bones, like branching roots. What's wrong with him? Nothing. Daniel looked up. What? That's what made it worse. Hale tapped the image. The man was healthy, no disease, no injury. Then why scan him? Because every survivor had the same anomaly. Daniel stared. All 9. Hale nodded. All 9. The door opened. A woman entered carrying a thin folder. Late 50s. Gray hair. Sharp eyes. Agent Hale. Dr. Shaw. She looked at Daniel. So this is him. Daniel frowned. This is who? She placed the folder on the table. Subject of interest. I'm not a subject. Dr. Evelyn Shaw looked almost sympathetic. Everyone says that at first. Daniel didn't like the answer. Who are you? Xenobiology. You study aliens? She paused. That's a very human word. What would you call them? Shaw opened the folder. Inside was a single photograph. A biological sample. A small, translucent structure suspended in liquid. Daniel looked away. What is that? Shaw answered quietly. We don't know. Then why keep it? Because it was alive when we found it. Daniel looked back. And now? Shaw's expression changed. Now it is part of us. The room became very quiet. Daniel stared at her. What does that mean? Shaw did not answer. Instead, she opened another file. Inside were medical records. Names. Dates. Locations. People. Thousands of them. These are cases where individuals displayed unusual behavioral changes. Daniel flipped through pages. Depression? No. Memory problems? No. Personality shifts? No. What then? Shaw looked directly at him. They became better. Daniel frowned. Better. More patient, more agreeable, more focused. They stopped making mistakes. Daniel felt uneasy. That sounds like improvement. Exactly. Shaw closed the file. That's why nobody noticed. The three of them sat in silence. Then Daniel asked, Collins. Hale looked at him. Shaw looked away. Daniel noticed. You know what happened? Nobody answered. You know. Finally, Shaw spoke. Collins discovered something. What? That some people weren't changing. Daniel waited. They were being corrected. The word hung in the room. Corrected. Shaw nodded. As if humanity was an unfinished design. Daniel thought about the photographs. The missing employee. The altered records. The thing beneath the building. The voice pretending to be Collins. How many? Hale looked confused. How many what? How many people have been replaced? No one answered. That was the answer. Later that night, Daniel returned home. Emily was asleep. At least he thought she was. He stood in the doorway watching her. Her breathing was slow. Regular. Normal. He hated himself for wondering. But he wondered anyway. On the nightstand beside her was a photograph. A recent one. Their anniversary. Daniel picked it up. He remembered taking it. He remembered the restaurant. The conversation. The rain outside. He remembered Emily laughing. Then he noticed something. A detail he had somehow missed. Behind them, reflected in the restaurant window, was a figure standing outside, watching them. Daniel moved closer. The photograph was clear. Too clear. The figure wore a dark coat. His face was hidden. But Daniel knew something was wrong, because the photograph had been taken 2 years ago, and the figure outside the window was holding the same chipped coffee mug, the same mug that had been sitting beneath level 8, the same mug belonging to Nathan Collins. Daniel turned the photograph over. Written on the back, in handwriting he recognized as his own, were 4 words. Words he had no memory of writing. He was never first. Daniel dropped the photograph. From upstairs, the floor creaked. Emily spoke softly. "Danny." He looked toward the staircase. "Yeah." A pause. Then, "Who are you talking to?" Daniel felt every muscle in his body tighten. Because he hadn't said anything. He hadn't spoken. Not once.